Nuts. No. Come back. Thank you, everyone. Sorry, we're slightly overdone on our break. Just so that people understand, I've moved Sam to the far end because I'm afraid I was often a nut and I didn't know that Sam is severely allergic to nuts. So we've moved him as far away from me as possible. And I have my hands, and the nuts were down at that end of the row. So. Kirsten, would I? So we are now on to our second part of the Hustings, and let me just get my thing out. So we've got the second round of questions. There are going to be 3 questions, and candidates will once again have 3 minutes to answer, and we will then go into our closing statements with 3 minutes each. So the second batch of questions, if you've got your paper ready to write them down, the first one is, we've got all our candidates, haven't we? Yes. What makes you think you have what it takes to prevent our green seat from falling to a populist party?
What makes you think?
You have what it takes to prevent our green seat from falling to a populist party. I'll speak it once more. What makes you think you have what it takes to prevent our green seat from falling to a populist party? And then the next question, how will you work to advance trans rights across Europe? Should the EU and its member nations give legal recognition to self-identified gender following the example set by Malta and Ireland? I certainly will. How will you work to advance trans rights across Europe? Should the EU and its member nations give legal recognition to self-identified gender following the example set by Malta and Ireland? I'll just read it once more. How will you work to advance trans rights across Europe? Should the EU and its member nations give legal recognition to self-identified gender following the example set by Malta and Ireland? And finally, looking back at the last 12 months, what campaign or piece of work are you most proud of? Include your role in it, whether you met your goals, and whether that mattered. So I'll read it again. Looking back at the last 12 months, what campaign or piece of work are you most proud of? Include your role in it, whether you met your goals, and whether that mattered. Would you like me to read that one once more? Studious writing.
Another question?
Sorry. It's the Green Party. Okay, now we have the next bit of complexity that I have to remember, which is how we're doing it for this batch. We're working from Rachel to Obi, and then we're going to take Sam, and then Vivian, and then Shara at the end. So we will try and keep all this proper. So, Rachel, is everyone comfortable they've got the 3 questions? Yep. So in which case we are starting with Rachel. Over to you.
So why do I think that I have what it takes to prevent our green seat from falling to a populist party? Well, I'm gonna imagine that by populist party, the person asking this question means UKIP or the Brexit Alliance or whatever they're calling themselves now. And there's facts that I can look at and go, yes, I've done it before. I've beaten such parties before. Whenever I've stood in regional and local elections, and I don't see there's any reason why I can't do that again. And it's because I tell a better story, and it's because my work is based on hope and not on fear. But I share some of the concerns of populists. I don't like the fact that corporations are taking over. I don't like the fact that politicians aren't listening to us. So there's slim common ground, but there is some common ground. And it's in actually listening to what people are saying, but giving them a different answer that satisfies what they want, like jobs, like peace, all of those things. We know how to actually deliver that, and we do, and I do. So then, how will I work to advance trans rights across Europe? And do I think that the EU should follow implementing self-ID following the example set by Malta in Ireland? Well, the answer is yes. I'm a strong supporter of trans rights and LGBTQIA+ rights. And I think that self-ID has gone well in Ireland and Malta. And I would love to see an EU directive implementing self-ID across the whole of Europe, so that people who know inside themselves best what's best for them, are able to say. And I think that fits in really well with green philosophy and green values, that people know what's best for themselves. So not only should we have self-ID, but we should also get rid of gender on passports. What is the point of having gender on passports? So looking back at the last 12 months, the campaign that I'm most proud of is the campaign against LOBOs, which are toxic financial products sold by banks to local authorities. Billions upon billions of pounds wasted and going directly from my council tax, and probably your council tax as well, straight to the bank. The role I played in it was I was an objector to my local council's accounts, and I risked criminal prosecution for talking about it, and the auditors that I was working with reminded me of that several times. And I met my goals because now local authorities across the country are taking banks to court to get that money back, and they will. So that's billions of pounds back for local authorities. Imagine what I could do at EU level. And that's just a voluntary role.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we have Remco.
Thank you.
Same 3 questions.
The first question I'm asked to answer is, what makes you think that you've got what it takes to prevent our green seat from falling to a populist party? First of all, if this campaign is going to happen, it's going to be a very interesting one. And I think as Greens, we have a very strong case, especially through how principled and how clear we have been throughout this whole situation of the Brexit result and the campaign. That actually, if you are someone who's very strongly in favour of staying in the EU, if you are very strongly in favour of reforming the EU, if you are very strongly in favour of also reforming the UK as a result of the process of us coming back to our senses and finding a way back into our skin that makes us feel comfortable and happy both as a nation and as a nation within the EU, then I think our seats should not be at risk. Quite the contrary, I think we should be looking at gaining some seats, especially from those parties who have been rather outspoken, shall we say, about how they deal with Brexit. In terms of the populists, there is not a great deal of overlap between our election and theirs. But it is true that some of the same sentiments that bring people out to the streets for, say, Extinction Rebellion here, are the same sentiments that bring people out to the streets as Gilets jaunes in France. And that is the sense that the only change that is meaningful right now is radical change. And our role in that, and my role in that, is to persuade people in conversation that that radical change sits with the Green programme and sits with the Green group in the European Parliament. I have only one left. Trans rights in Europe, absolutely. Of course, the Greens in Europe have always been at the forefront of fighting for all sorts of human rights, and that includes trans rights. It is fantastic that there are already 2 member states where self-identification is the standard. And I think wherever we can as Greens, we should take those great examples and promote them within the European Union and to member states. And in the last 12 months, the campaign I'm most proud of is the campaign that I'm part of in Compass, where I work, for a citizens' assembly on Brexit. This was something that nobody was talking about. And then together with Neil Lawson, my boss, we set up a campaign. We got people to write articles, opinion articles in the newspapers. We set up a petition that got more than 75,000 signatures, and we're regularly communicating with the people who signed that petition. We're getting together with other interest groups and with MPs to see how we can promote this idea. Should there be an extension, then you will hear from us again in the next few weeks. Thank you very much.
So what makes you think that what makes me think that I have what it takes to prevent our Green seat from falling to a populist party? Well, I think it's going to be fascinating if we get to the point of having another vote in the European election. Obviously, that's why we're here. But it's going to be a very strange dynamic, I think, because there will be, unfortunately, it's going to be very polarised. And I think that there will be a strong Leave party, but also I think we have will obviously be very firm against for Remain. And the thing is, the Leave vote the Leave campaign is all over the place. It's in tatters in London. UKIP has kind of come and gone. A lot of their points have been discounted. There's accusations of cheating, and I think that, especially in London, the populist vote isn't a threat, although I don't want to be complacent like we were last time. So I think that it's going to be a strange vote, and I think we've learned from our experience, and I think we're going to do better. I think because we've been consistently saying the message that we want to stay, and we're going to make a success of it, or it's going to be a people's vote, or Caroline has done a great job of just saying, yes, we definitely want to stay, but we need to listen to the people. And I think that the people who voted to leave and listen to the reasons why they did that. So I think we've been really, really consistent. I'm going to put a lot of energy into working with the other London Green parties to work out a strategy for our Remain message. And I'm not being complacent, but I think we've got a really powerful position. And then how we work to advance trans rights across the EU. Well, this is another example, a bit like workers' rights, that we're in a rapidly changing society as things keep evolving, and the legislation is lagging behind. And it's great that Malta and Ireland have set such a good example, and we should be learning from other European countries and taking their approach on board. So let's get on with it. And then finally, running out of time, over the last 12 years, my favourite campaign was in the local elections last year, where I managed to mobilise my friends and my committed lowercase green friends to help me campaign, and we managed to do amazing things. We panicked the local Labour Party, and the Conservatives were pointing things at me saying, this is the new guy, so they were really worried as well. So we did really well, and so it's very satisfactory. We didn't get elected, but we were close, and next time we will be.
Okay. What makes me think, what prevents a green seat falling into a populist party? From green to populist, that's some swing. Now, I'm a passionate European, and I can put the European case because of that, particularly the fact that Europe isn't perfect. And that's what the populists will obviously go on. I know Europe isn't perfect, but populists are not European, too difficult to put the kind of European. I think so. So I'll leave it at that. I don't really come to, pick our battles, as it were. Now, the trans rights should the EU recognise it. Now, rights, trans rights, so comes into that phenomenon, and I find it personally that I find it really difficult to identify with how trans people feel within our rather segmented community and society and policy. So what I would do, I completely agree with them. I completely agree that they should be equal to absolutely everybody else, whatever they want to do and however they want to define themselves. And I will be guided by them. I will support them. I will work with them. I will campaign with them. I back gender-free environments, gender-free toilets, gender-free changing rooms. I think that it's just a complete waste of money and time to have these gender-specific situations. So, but personally, I'm guided by the people in question, the trans people themselves. And my campaign over the last 12 months has been about glyphosate. Has been a very successful campaign. Glyphosate, the banning glyphosate in Camden. We have managed to get 1,000 signature petition. We've done a cross-party motion. All 4 parties are sitting around the table. We've presented it to the council, batted it into the long grass, timed out. We're presenting it again at the next council meeting, and it's been a huge success and we've got great press, and so I'm very proud of that. Thank you very much.
Okay, the one about preventing green seat from falling to a populist party. According to the data, say the UKIP AMs are pretty much in shambles because they're not actually doing anything. And I don't think an image of Farage in a pub actually helps matters, and the fact that they don't even turn up to meetings in the EU. So they can either become popular because yes, they promise to actually keep going to the pub and not actually doing their jobs, or actually getting up their posteriors and actually doing something about it. But back in 2015, there was a blog, another angry voice, who pointed out that if, just by policy alone, 75% of UKIP voters would actually vote Green, just on our policy. The only policy that they don't like is the immigration and freedom of movement side. So perhaps there might be some leeway there. How would you, number 2, how we work to advance trans rights across Europe? I support the rights of transsexuals to actually have the same rights as every other human being on the planet. I do take note that some of them are actually pointing out that self-ID might actually put those rights under danger. For instance, in Canada, Vancouver, there's a rape crisis center who has already said that because they're not being given money by the government because they refuse to allow trans women into their space, they will only be getting donations, nothing from the state at all. There's a case of a man who actually, because he's proclaimed himself as a woman, is now suing 16 women who actually work from home because they refuse to actually give them a Brazilian, which is for a woman with female parts, that's actually a different technique to a male. Somebody said they wouldn't actually do it, but then if he gets injured, they'd probably sue them. Sports people like Martin Navratilova, Sharon Davies, Ola Radcliffe, Dame Fatima Whitbread pointed out that allowing trans women into women's sports actually would mean that women's sports would be eliminated. My personal sport, as some people would say, would be weight training or powerlifting. The person who, before they got injured, was going to be going for gold. They actually, they could lift something like 260 kilograms, and the person who would have actually gotten silver could only lift 200. So, so that was actually by the way of doing things. Last one. Oh, sorry, I'm losing it. Sorry.
Your campaign.
Campaign, 12 months. However, my campaign for the last 12 months was actually having a child. I'm proud of that. The other was actually glyphosate. Unfortunately, the Barnet Council said that they will only ban it if the central government does so first. It's a Tory council, but they're the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're now moving along this side, but we're starting with Sam. And then we'll come back to Vivian, as if Sam and Shara were still sitting in the right places. So Sam.
Yeah. So in terms of what makes me think I could keep the Green seat falling to a populist party, I want in our campaign for us to appeal to young people who have never come out and voted before. We forget that those who were 15 at the time of the referendum would be eligible to vote in this coming European election. And we want to create a vision that inspires them to actually participate and vote for the first time. We want to bring young people out to vote, but we have to look at the reasons why they don't. They don't because candidates are not looking like them. They don't because candidates are not their age or talking their language. I don't by any means think that I am going to be the ultimate answer to this question. It would be incredibly arrogant of me to think so. But I think we need to be supporting more young candidates across lists, and in fact the European Green Party have actually made a pledge to this. And I hope that I am not going to be the only young candidate participating in these processes going forward. There'll be many more, like Cullen and I. In terms of trans rights, in my own personal belief, I believe trans men are men and trans women are women. The EGP in their policy have clearly stated that gender self-identity is something that they want to pursue, and I wish to be supporting that. I'm also incredibly proud that the EGP have actually recently supported intersex rights on a major piece of legislation, and that for the first time is giving rights to people who have not had a voice and not had an equal footing. I also am incredibly aware of the privilege that I have sitting here today in front of you as a panel, and I really want to be supportive in this campaign of the incredible trans candidates we have across Europe. In Malta we have a candidate, Mina Tolu, who is completely shifting the dynamic of European politics in Malta for the first time and changing the conservative attitudes that we have. If I was elected to be one of your candidates, I want to be supportive to those candidates and to give them a voice and to allow these other candidates to be able to speak about those particular issues. In terms of a campaign I'm proud of participating in, I'm really proud of working with the Federation of Young European Greens to get more young candidates on European lists. And we've achieved nearly over 40 young candidates all across Europe who have been a crucial part of the Green Wave. I don't think that we have 100% achieved our goal because of, even though there are young candidates getting on lists, they are not in electoral positions. And we need to have a conversation within Green parties as to how we are going to change this particular matter. My role in the campaign is mainly to be working on strategies to support other young candidates and to see how we can uplift them. But I suddenly realised that I didn't actually have much work to do because the young candidates we have across Europe right now are beyond inspiring. We have Kim van Sparentak in the Netherlands who is striking every week for the climate. We have Mina Tolu changing attitudes on abortion. We have Mika Bloss fighting for migrant rights in Germany. And I think we all need to get behind these young candidates. And I think that is my proudest moment to be involved in the Greens. Thank you.
Vivian.
Yes. on what makes me, what I have, what it takes to prevent our Green seat going to a populist party was just force of personality. And then it occurred to me that actually I've got a lot of experience in answering questions and speaking on Israel-Palestine. And I can assure you that there's an awful lot of differing positions there. And I bring moderation and rationality to that. And I can do exactly the same when it comes to the European, to the election. One reason Leave won the referendum is that people were ignorant of the positive work carried out by the EU and its positive benefits. It was taken for granted. In addition, it was criticised in the media pretty much endlessly. And what we have to do is to keep putting forward the positive about the EU, and I think that's something I could do. The second question about trans rights, I'm going to agree with Kirsten on this and say, well, it's a human rights agenda, and that's what we have to pursue. But I'm also going to declare a certain amount of ignorance on this, and therefore I would like to sit down with people who are campaigning on the issue to find out more about it and to have my questions answered. I haven't actually worked on a campaign as such over the last 12 months. So with regard to the Green Party, I took over being chair of West London Green Party September 2017, and I would say that from April last year to March this year, that we have expanded what we're doing. We have more people who are being active. We have more activities ourselves, and so I will take that as something that I'm most proud of in building up West Central London slowly but surely. Thank you.
Moving us swiftly on, Peter.
Right. First of all, I reject the term populist, because they're not that popular. They're only popular. A small group of people. They're simplistic, is what they are. They come up with these simple ideas that they think are going to solve everything. The obvious way to combat that is to show they don't. They quite clearly don't. The whole trouble we've been in Brexit for the last 2.5 years is because people came up with a simple idea for a really complex situation, and it doesn't work. We can talk about the orange man in America and all his simple ideas and why they don't work as well. In terms of what I personally bring to it, one of the pieces of feedback I've most been pleased with from Hustings when I delivered is the fact that I answer the questions that people ask and my answers make sense. Now, I put that down a lot to the fact that I'm talking Green Party policy, and so for me that's common sense. But I think that's the way we make sure we defeat these simplistic people, is we come up with the common sense answers and we show that it's common sense. Moving on, trans rights, my earliest sort of political activity, and I must admit being dragged along by some of my friends in my mid-teens, to gay rights marches on Clause 28 and tackling those issues. And so I sort of cut my teeth in those civil rights movements. I'm a full supporter of trans rights. For me, the way I put it, is the cutting edge of the civil rights movement at the moment, because it's also having to deal with a lot of the issues around education, misunderstanding, fears about what those trans rights mean. Now, that's not in any way dismissing those fears or those concerns. They need to be addressed. But it's a process that we've gone through in previous parts of the civil rights movement in dealing with those misunderstandings, helping people to understand what trans rights actually are and what they're not. And we, given the examples of Malta and Ireland, we use those examples. It's real life. It's not just theoretical. We can actually talk about what's been happening in those countries and use that to advance those causes. And yes, the EU should be leading on self-ID, and there should be something that's coming forward. This is, as I said, for me, this is the next step in the civil rights movement, and we should be pushing hard behind it. Campaigns most proud of, at a previous Hustings, I think in this very building a few weeks ago, I talked about glyphosate, getting it banned by Croydon Council. Another campaign I will talk about, because it's not quite finished yet, but I've been working within my role in Green Party Regional Council to get a statement out from the Green Party in terms of well-being of our activists and our members, in terms of looking after each other. It's very easy for people to burn themselves out because we care so much and we work too hard and we take on everything and we do all the stuff like that. And so, as the nice fluffy party, we should be nice and fluffy and we should be looking after each other, giving people permission to say no and not take on too much work, but also collectively looking after people within our parties and making sure they don't take on too much work. It's not finished yet. Hopefully the statement will be coming out soon, but that's something I'm really proud of. Thank you.
And now we'll hear from Gulda.
Hello. Do I believe that I have what it takes? Well, I have you. I have local party members. I have activists. I know through elections it's not about the individual. So winning an election is not about the individual. It's about mobilising volunteers to get out on the streets and talk to people and talk to voters. And I feel I'm a team player. I feel I could energise local party members, volunteers, activists, and work collaboratively with others. I can't say that word. And energise a campaign. So I think together, and I know you can't win unless you have people out there supporting you and working with you. So that is my answer to question one. Question two, how would I advance trans rights across Europe? Well, I believe it's a human rights, civil rights issue. There should be no discrimination at all. I would work with groups to advance trans rights. As an MEP, I would join ILGA. I would also, we've seen the examples in Malta and Ireland, so it can be done in EU states, and we can tackle discrimination. But I would also look at the media and work hard at looking at the media. We've seen time and time again the role of the media in victimising people who don't believe a certain way or look a certain way or behave a certain way. I've been on the other side of that, and I think it's important that we tackle not only from a political and a legislative environment, but also a very much a media environment. That's there. And then to the campaign that I've been most proud of in the last 12 months. The results have come out in the last 12 months. I will say Lambeth, and we are the official opposition on the council. So, but the campaign, the result, it started. The effort started many years back. So when I joined the party, and I used to go to Lambeth meetings where only 5 people turned up, being part of those campaigns on housing, on saving our libraries, on air pollution. So behind the scenes work, we always see the candidates and the work that the candidates do, and the nature of politics is you have to show on Facebook or on a video, oh, we've done this, we've done that, but there is a huge team of people behind the scenes, stuffing envelopes, delivering leaflets, knocking on doors, making things happen, making tea, for example, and I've done every single role, so I'm very proud of being part of something and seeing the results. So yes, that's what I'm most proud of.
And we have answers to the 3 questions from Shara.
Thanks so much, Caroline. So in terms of what makes me think I have what it takes, for me that's a question about belief, conviction, self-belief even. And it absolutely is the case that if you are the lead candidate with a probability or a possibility of being the next Green MEP, you need to have that belief and conviction, and I do have that. And I know how hard it is for us to get those MEP seats. I was there with Jean when she was elected the last 3 times, and I could see it's by no means a foregone conclusion. So I hope I have that visibility. But just to echo what's already been said, absolutely, we get our conviction and we get our mettle from green policy and green politics. That's what's given us our conviction. When people come to me and they say, could you give me some tips on to combating the emergency, which isn't Brexit, but it's climate change. In terms of trans rights, as we know, trans rights are civil human rights. And I am the best friend of the trans person. Let me tell you why. Because as has already been touched on, but I don't think has been clarified, when somebody has a new claim or a claim which isn't properly accommodated in law or society, often it will have an impact, perceived or real, on other people. And we do see that happening in this area. And we need to make sure that we have women around the table, women who have suffered and feel that their civil rights are under threat. And we have to have that debate. And we doubly need to have it in the Green Party of England and Wales as other Green parties have. Because we need to resolve that issue. And I understand what the direction of travel is. But we must make sure we have clear, unambiguous policy on this. Because as your Green MEP, I will be accountable to you. I'll be accountable to the National Party and the London Green Party, even before the Green Group in Europe. Finally, in terms of a campaign, many of the campaigns that each of us are passionate about and mobilise people around take much more than 12 months. And the thing that one campaign which I have most identified is the justifiable backlash against the Islamophobic prevent policy. The way it's been institutionalised is beyond repair. And with all my speaking engagements, with my campaigning locally, in my anti-racist speeches, one of the main areas of campaigning has been to try and reform that. And I would say in the last few months, when finally the government has relented and said we need a review, that is something that I'm proud of and I've helped push for within the party. Thank you.
Okay, now we are running 5 minutes behind, but I'm sure we will make our way through it to the end of this hustings. We are now going to hear a summing up, 3 minutes from each candidate, and use your 3 minutes to tell the audience and the people watching on the live stream and the people who might watch the live stream later anything that you think that you haven't yet had a chance to say because of the questions that have come out. You can also react to things that other people have said. You've got 3 minutes. We're going to hold you to time very tightly. And we're starting at the far end, but that means starting with Shara.
I get that.
Shara, you have your 3 minutes. Over to you.
Fairness is fairness. I'd like to start by elaborating a little bit on my experience. I think that's very important because whoever were to front, shall we say, the European election for London needs to have experience, tenacity, and have the wheels well oiled, so to speak. So, when, during the referendum, I was at the City of London with Jean and others, and we could see the votes coming in, and it was absolutely devastating. Around about 3 a.m., it was pretty clear that we couldn't, in cosmopolitan London, actually take it over the line. It was absolutely devastating, because as I explained, one of the main reasons that I entered the Green Party was that internationalist bent. This referendum result and Brexit at a stroke would literally have cut our representation across Green Party of England and Wales by 3 MEPs. One of the main areas where we could actually rely upon proportional representation. And what I want to achieve, if I were able to stand again for the European Parliament, is to remind people of that, to ensure that we have that representation and mobilisation in Europe. And we would have very little time in order to convince people of that. And even if we have our MEPs back in the European Parliament, we would have very little time to make a meaningful impact. So, number one reason I think that I have going for me is not just my longevity within the party, but my productivity. I, like many of the volunteer activists in the party, have had to hold down our Green Party activity. Almost it's not out of choice, I often like to say. I have no choice. I have no choice, because we're political, we cannot but be political. But we had to do all that activity in amongst all the other things that we've had to do, including holding down full-time jobs, for example. And I would relish the opportunity, like many of the Greens in this room, to be able to do that without having to hold down a full-time job. And I think
I would be productive. And let me just hold up here, I've got a prop here. Here, this isn't even going back everything that I've done, but this just contains, there's 5 folders here of news cuttings, quotes, activity that I've been responsible for on behalf of the local party, the regional party, and the national party. Just clippings, because I couldn't but speak my mind, I couldn't but articulate the voice of the Green Party. And I hope, and there's a couple of books as well, okay? 2010, Why Vote Green, 2015, a compilation of writings from other Green spokespersons. So I think I'm productive. And for sure, one of the main things that we will need in a Green MEP in Europe is productiveness. That means to be a hard negotiator where necessary, and to articulate the vision and the values of the Green Party. So please think carefully and consider giving me your #1 vote.
Thank you very much. And then it's Gulna.
Yes, I'm going to stand up now. The struggle for Brexit is not yet over. I promise, as your lead candidate, to work with local Green parties and Remain campaigners to give the decision back to the people. Across London, we can spend time talking with voters, connecting with Remainers and Leavers, and sharing our positive vision for a reformed Europe. We know the EU isn't perfect. That's why Greens have always been at the forefront of fighting for more democracy and more accountability. We need a Europe that is united on tackling the key problems of our time, like climate change and the refugee crisis. The EU has too often prioritised the power of large corporations. There is rightful anger about the actions of the Commission. As your MEP candidate, I promise not to shy away from the flaws of the EU. But only Europe-wide action can secure a future of our planet. We need stronger environmental protections, stronger action on cutting emissions, confronting member states who are failing to cut out fossil fuels, and we need investments moved away from dirty energy, and we need the action on curbing the lobbying power of the large corporations. And London is a diverse city, and we do need more BAME representation on the EU Parliament. Less than 2% MEPs are BAME, which is unacceptable in the 21st century. I have stood as a parliamentary candidate twice in Vauxhall, one of the largest Remain constituencies in the country. And as an MEP, I will represent the views of all Londoners. But I promise, should the worst happen and we crash out of the EU, I will continue to fight. Even if the European elections do not happen, we should be working together with a slate of candidates, working to make the case for a greener Europe, with the UK at the heart of it. I am certain that there will be a campaign to rejoin. Greens should be part of that movement, campaigning to expose the flaws in leaving and the benefits in rejoining. With your support, I promise to work with all candidates to make that case. So, in the forthcoming selection, please do consider me, Gulnar Hasnain, as your lead candidate. So vote for me #1 in your MEP list.
We're going to hear from Peter.
Thank you. I always find this bit really difficult because I find it difficult promoting myself because it's not my view of politics. Politics shouldn't be about individuals. I hate personality politics with individuals just telling people how things should be. For me, politics is about bringing people together. It's about having that diversity of voices, that collaborative nature. We make better decisions the more diverse voices we have involved because we get those different perspectives. So it shouldn't be about individuals, which is why I love the European Union, as I've said before. It's about bringing those different voices together, getting those different people together to make good decisions. And working across the parties, as I said, as an MEP, we won't be in charge, we won't be forcing things through, we have to work with people to actually make this happen and find common ground and bring people together. That's particularly important in this country at the moment. The referendum in 2016, regardless of the point that it was fraudulent and corrupt and all the rest of it, the advice of the advisory referendum was that the country is split. And I think it's been dreadful the way, particularly on the right wing, but some on the left, have turned it into winners and losers. It isn't about winners and losers. It's about having different perspectives on what we think of the European Union. And as Caroline Lucas, I think, brilliant in the work she started on listening to leaders, I think that's vitally important. People have quite justifiable reasons why the EU hasn't worked, and I agree with a lot of them. We're not about keeping it as it is. We must campaign to remain in the European Union, but to reform it, to make it work better. As I said earlier, the European project can be a powerful force for good. It isn't always at the moment. As I said in my article, Greece being a classical example of where it's really not worked well. We need to sort of listen to the people who have those concerns and bring them along with us. In terms of what I can bring as a candidate, as I've discussed, I've done some work in Europe as a civil servant. I spent many years in the civil service, mostly in Westminster. I'm a member of the Green MEP Advisory Board, so I have a very little experience of some of the work of what our MPs have been doing up till now. So I have some knowledge and experience to bring with it. To be fair, and I think this is true for all of us as candidates, becoming an MEP would be a huge learning experience. We've got a lot to learn. And as I said earlier, I might try and get hold of Jean's phone number if I believe we have a lot to learn. I learn things quickly. It's one of the things I pick up, so I hopefully can do that. I think my main thing is this collaborative approach. I think it's ideally suited. My way of working in politics works with the MEP model. In the elections, we'll be standing as a group, not as individuals. People vote for the party, not for individuals. And so I think working as a group of candidates is how we're going to be successful. I'd love to lead that campaign, so I'm asking you to put me at the top of your list of candidates if you would.
Thank you, Peter. And now we're going to hear from Vivian.
Well, I'm going to repeat what I said at the beginning, which is that I'm so proud to be a member of the Green Party and to be standing alongside all these great people and everything, you know, that people have said. I love Europe for the same reason I love London. And I don't use the word love as in patriotism, but rather as in appreciation. Multiculturalism is very important to me. Allowing people to live according to their culture, unless of course it contradicts our own human rights or civil or criminal laws. I love that London is made up of different villages, each with its own atmosphere, each with its own culture in some places. Look at Edgware Road, Golders Green, Southall, and all the other little villages that London's made up of. I love that each of these villages is made up of a mixture of economic classes, that expensive properties are a hop, skip and a jump away from social housing, unlike Paris, for example, with the more expensive properties within and the deprived banlieue without. That mix doesn't only benefit social cohesion, it also helps maintain the local environment. We Greens might very well wish it weren't the case that the better off have a stronger voice, but we have to deal with the world that we live in while working towards a better one. This vague separation, though, does result in major issues within London, the UK and Europe, where different cultures and communities don't mix sufficiently. It can lead to lack of knowledge about the other, resulting in mistrust of the other. And what can the EU do about it? Well, continuing to fund or starting to fund cross-cultural programmes in schools, for example, not only educating about the other, but also learning to appreciate each other. For the sake of the people, for the sake of the planet, the European Parliament needs someone like me to keep banging this particular drum. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivian. And we're now going to hear from Sam Murray.
This year, I don't believe it's good enough to be just European. I don't think it's good enough to say we want to stop Brexit, and I do not think it's good enough to just say we want change. We have to be brave this year, and we have to act. If selected to be on the London European list, I want to help present a vision of the Europe that we want to become. A Europe where we clearly say that nobody is illegal, and we find safe ways for people to migrate into the European Union. A Europe where we recognise ourselves as the sum of our cultural parts and celebrate the immense and wonderful identities we have across Europe. I also want to see a Europe where we believe in our young people. I believe young people are political, and I believe young people can make change if they are empowered to do so. And we need to have votes at 16, we need to have candidacy, but we also need to invest in young people being able to act in their own communities. If I was selected as your MEP, I want to draw on my experience working within the Green Party for the past 7 years. I've been a member of the International Committee. I currently sit on the board of the Federation of Young European Greens, and I've also been sitting as the co-chair of the Young Greens as well, campaigning during the Brexit referendum, but also campaigning for important issues such as recognising that people come into our country and people are not numbers, and challenging this ideology around migration that exists. If selected, I want to fight for a social Europe, a sustainable Europe, and a welcoming and inclusive Europe. But there is something that we can do regardless of the Brexit vote. There is a way we can actually take action. We can still be part of this European election no matter what the outcome. And I want everybody in this room today to commit to asking all of the Europeans living in our wonderful city of London to vote Green, and to campaign and lobby for them to vote Green in their respective countries as well. We cannot forget this during this potential election. We cannot forget that we also have the power to help shape the Green Europe as well. I want you all to join me. I want you all to be brave, and I want you all to join me in acting together for the future of Europe. And that is why I'm asking for your vote. So please vote Sam for Europe.
And we're now turning to this end of the table, so the camera may make a few movements. And Rachel, it's up to you.
So, while I have thoroughly enjoyed listening to all my colleagues here and to some of you today, I'm actually disappointed and a little bit worried. Why? Because there's a giant hole in this discussion, and that hole is Northern Ireland. Why has no one mentioned it? And I think it's an explosive situation. Actually, that's an unfortunate metaphor. It's a complex, intractable issue, and our first reaction can sometimes be to ignore such issues and deny that they exist. But there is a solution, and it lies in listening and in mediation and in working together, even with people with whom we disagree with every fibre of our being. And I have experience of working with such people. It's basically the opposite of Theresa May's approach, which, as Jenny Jones wrote in The Independent a few days ago, is an absolute failure of leadership. So, moving on, why should you consider putting me at the top of your list when you vote? One of the things that I bring to the table is my experience. And every time I've stood for the Green Party at local, regional and national level, I've won the highest number of votes ever for the Greens in that area. So my goal is to win not just one, but 2 Green MEPs for London. And that seems impossible. But getting the banks to write a cheque for hundreds of millions of pounds to local authorities also seemed as impossible as getting toothpaste out of a tub of hummus. But it will happen, and keep your eye on what happens in the courts. So, Gulnar said something very wise, and that is, it is our job as MEP candidates, one of our primary jobs, to motivate volunteers and to get people out on the streets. And what I would like you to do, when you decide who to vote for, and I really don't envy your decision, because we have such a diverse and brilliant range of candidates here, consider who is able to motivate you best. Who gives you the most energy? If I'm elected, I will make this about you, about listening to you, and particularly those of you who have been marginalised by the current system. We have a huge opportunity right now when people are fed up with a failure of leadership in Labour and a failure of leadership in the Conservative Party. Greens can provide that leadership. And my goal is to paint a vision for London in the EU that generates hope and energy, and I will only be satisfied with at least 2 Green MEPs for London.
Thank you, Rachel, and now Remco.
There is a thread that runs through all of my European Green campaigning and involvement, and that thread is citizenship. From the very beginning in my involvement in Green parties, I was part of a group within the European Green Party that campaigned within that party to let people be members directly of a European Green Party rather than to be represented by delegates of their own party. And that is a really important thing, because it is the idea that we all need to have, that we are citizens, not just of our own cities and of our countries, but also citizens together with all Europeans of this European Union, that makes us care for and embrace the big issues that we are talking about. One of the reasons that the majority of the people in this country voted to leave in 2016 is that their EU citizenship was not something that they particularly knew or valued. One of the results of their vote is that there are now 65 million people at risk of losing their EU citizenship, and that is a tragedy beyond words. On top of that, there is also the issue of the 3 million people, of whom I am one, who are living in this country and who have been living in this country for a very long time and who care about this country, and who will now become second-rate citizens in this country. In a way, I'm lucky because I will still be an EU citizen, and people who are British may lose their EU citizenship, but it is, of course, a loss of our common citizenship that is at stake here. So I'm very pleased to be part of the European Green Party, where that notion of citizenship is much further advanced than in any of the other groups, where we understand that when we are elected to the European Parliament, that we don't just represent the Green Party at home, but that we also represent those Greens in those countries who don't have the privilege of having an MEP. And that, at the moment, even includes the Scottish Green Party, who are a very close party to us, but who do not have their own representation in Brussels, so it's really important that we make sure that we represent them too. There are 2 things that I really want to do if I'm elected as an MEP, to make sure that we bring Brussels, that we bring European politics to London. One of them is to work within the London Green Party to set up a network of members who want to be involved in European politics, and not just being talked to, but genuinely involved, to have debates, interesting sessions, to have fun together, and to feel that connection to the European project. The other thing that I'm really keen to do is to begin to build a community of young people, partly on the back of the school strikes, but also with those people who haven't participated in school strikes, to make sure that they have access to us, to the Green MEPs, and that we work with them, not as an election machine, but really as a way of becoming European citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, as you all know, the status quo is broken. The Brexit vote threw everything into disarray. Our Parliament doesn't know which way's up, to put it politely. Everything's changing. The world's changing. Technology is changing. Workers' rights are changing. Opinions on trans issues changing. There's populism happening. Europe's in disarray. I thrive on change. I love change. It's my favourite thing. And I love to learn from others and adapt to that change and help. And I think there's something that hopefully has been the thread from my answers today. It's helping people cope with that change so it's a just transition from a dirty, polluting job to a clean job, or if it's talking about how the benefits of the EU, if it's the benefits of the EU and people being scared of change. So I want to help people change, and you know, it's one of my thrills really. But speaking to Jean was fascinating as well, because it's a job that she's done an amazing job of, and I'd really like to have the opportunity to follow in her large footsteps, because as Green politicians. And what I think we're missing a trick on is there are some really great successes in Europe that we should adopt and bring and import back here, and that would help people understand the value of Europe in itself and the European movement. So, you know, we've had great successes in France over workers' rights. We've got the Malta and Ireland doing the making a change to the trans rights, and of course we've got Amsterdam's active travel. We can take those examples and import them back to us. So. Just to wrap up, I think that I have a real scientific knowledge of the environment, and I think that that's crucial, hopefully, to help inform EU policy and to make sure that we get things right. Unlike Dieselgate, for example, I mean, we might have seen that coming. I've got experience working with European organisations. I love it. I love that. I love that. The opportunity. We should import the best practices from across Europe, because there's some great examples out there. And I'm really driven to make a fairer society for all, and this is just a great opportunity to do that. So please put me at the top of the list, Darren Moore, because I'd love to do this job.
Now we have two more candidates still to hear from, and Kirsten, I'm giving you the floor.
It's the nuts turn.
Sorry.
Sorry, past reference. I bet you're dying to hear about my small but perfectly formed contribution to the metaphorical neuron I mentioned at the beginning is, or perhaps you're not, but I'll tell you anyway. The group I join would obviously be the European Greens. My issue, coming to all 500 million EU citizens, is consumption. Consumption is the driver of all our ills. It's as simple as that. We need to use less stuff. Less is more. Let the fossil fuel industry do its thing. It's just responding to demand, our demand. If we stop demanding stuff, they will stop pumping, mining, and fracking. And everyone can do this. Everyone needs to do this. We spend 50% of our energy making stuff and the other 50% getting rid of it again, recycling, incinerating, or fly tipping on an industrial scale in the sea or in our countryside, and that's insane. We throw away 2/3 of our food, for goodness sake. We wear our clothes on average 3 times, except me, I've been here for about 30 years. We pour away hundreds of liters of clean, expensively treated water every day. It's just not okay, people. Growth purely to satisfy shareholders is immoral. We need a completely new set of incentives for workers and owners of capital alike. Let's be bold. Let's tax company travel out of existence and make video conference and tax deductible instead. Stop flying flowers from Kenya, use flowers from Kent, and give Kenya the funds to invest so they can stand on their own 2 feet. Or how many millions of feet there are in Kenya? 100 billion. Let's eat, let's meet. Let's stop making thousands of gallons of almond milk, using up millions of gallons of precious water in the process. Let's drink less almond milk instead. Less is more. Let's make bling-on fashionable, just like the fur trade became practically extinct when enough trendsetters turned their backs, in very graphic terms. Together we can stop the grotesque overconsumption which is killing us and killing the planet, and we must. As Greens, we have the means and the morals to get this ball rolling. No other set of politicians has the guts to tackle growth. Labour parties are wedded to the trade unions, Conservative parties are on top to corporate funding. Only the Greens are clean. And that's a unique political asset, one we must maximize to the full. our Green European colleagues, 52 MEPs, 18 countries, 5 regions, will run plenty of policies we can join and support. And if we need lead on cutting consumption, they will join us too. So let's start turning around this supertanker today. Thank you.
Now, I've just noticed that one candidate who was absent has walked into the room. And before I bring Obi in for his final 3 minutes summing up, I just wanted to give you the opportunity, if you would like, to have 3 minutes to address people, or if that maybe that coming at it cold is more than you want. But I just want to let you have that opportunity. We'll go to Obi now, and if you'd like it, you can have your 3 minutes after Obi. Obi, over to you.
Okay, I thought I was going to go out, but that's good. I started my activism, 2003 was actually, I guess, the Iraq War. Then I got in trouble with my army unit saying, okay, if you're told to go to Iraq, would you go? I said, yes, I would, because I signed the papers. I didn't until Occupy London came, that was in 2011, then I ended up spending time there for 4 months cleaning toilets, because I didn't really know much about politics. So I thought, okay, make myself useful. They need people to clean the toilets and sweep the streets. I'm game for that. From then on, I went on to a few of the groups, Economics Working Group, New Party Debates, and I became the camera guy. I was actually a signaler in the army, so using signals for activism was actually a good translation of my skills. I was happy in the being behind the camera. I started stalking the green, the big people in the Greens, like Aaron Russell, Karen Lucas, Sean Berry. Sean Berry didn't even ask me, are you stalking me? Trying to actually find the Greens, to actually be able to interview them, find out what they're all about, and because they're always ignored by the media, I wanted them to actually be to assist in any way I can. So yes, so I saw Karen Lucas being arrested, and that was that. I ended up joining. Although the first time I met Karen Lucas, I asked her, "Oh, is this your first protest?" Okay, everyone told me when they did. And again, so in my manifesto, it's about 5 points. Arms trade to 1 million climate jobs, stopping Brexit, human rights. Unfortunately, yes, because of Shamima Begum and Sajid Javid, my citizenship is now second class. I've been arrested twice. Theoretically, the government can just turn around and say, okay, you're not being deported. My parents came from the Philippines, brought us here, so I could actually be deported in the same way, just because I would be regarded as a domestic extremist, unfortunately. Another thing that I want to actually enact is actually the ecocide law. Family is the universal basic income. Our problems are actually fascism rising and climate change actually happening to us. I believe those 5 things that we can actually action in the European Union is one way to actually ensure that the rest of the world will actually follow us. 500 million people is the biggest trading bloc in the world, just because of consumption, would ensure that we can actually we can force the world to actually change things. And yes, we would need the EU, neoliberal as it is, in order to do so. Thank you.
Yes. Fantastic. Oh, that's so kind. Thank you. Yes, do you want to take place here at the panel? So this is Eleanor, whose statement I read out earlier, who has been working all day. Over to you. 3 minutes.
Thank you very much for the chance to speak. I won't impose on you because I feel that this time in the Hustings should be about summing up the conversations that you've had. And I really usually enjoy Hustings very much. I like the sense of dialogue, and coming from a theatrical background, having to think on my feet. But I have been talking all day. I've been audio describing for blind and partially sighted people, as you heard. through that work, I've had a direct involvement with EU exchange programmes. I took part in a trip with French, Italian, Spanish audio describers. And that's something where it'd be very easy to dismiss it as a nice jolly for the people who went on it. We all went to Paris. We spent a lot of time learning about each other's working practices. And I know my practice has changed through it, but I also know of Spanish cities where they never had any theatrical provision for blind and partially sighted people. But now they do, because people actually came, saw it in practice, saw how it practically works, because it's a bit confusing, you know, how is this going to happen? But they also saw the difference that it makes for blind and partially sighted people. So I feel that, in that sense, I have a sense of what European exchanges can mean. Part of the Erasmus, Grundtvig, there are dozens and dozens of different programs, and thousands of people have benefited from them. I've also been part of the Union Internationale de la Marionnette, which is a puppet organisation, which sounds very dodgy, but it is actually to do with marionettes, puppets, and it was founded again after the Second World War as, in fact, earlier, it was founded in the First World War as a peace organisation. So that kind of international, multilingual context is really one in which I feel very at home and very much enlivened. So I'm so sorry that I wasn't with you earlier today, but thank you for the chance to just introduce myself, and I'd be very happy to stay around and answer any questions.
Through the door, but I think not. So I'm going to draw our session to a close. I want to thank every single one of the candidates, and that includes Odie, who's now standing over to the side, for all the thought and effort that they've put into their presentations and the way that they've answered the questions. I hope that people in the audience will feel able to contact candidates if they've got further questions they want to ask. And I hope that everyone, I never vote until I've seen the hustings. You learn so much about candidates from a hustings, and I hope that that has been the case for everyone in the audience today. I also want to thank Phil and Nick, who have made sure that today happens. Seriously. I want to just take another opportunity to say thank you to Jean, because Jean has been our MEP. I really hope that these hustings will result in a set of candidates who will actually be able to stand in EU elections. And seriously, this is a very, very dangerous time in our lives. And if we lose our representation at an EU level, we are losing something absolutely massive. So, fingers crossed, let's hope that we can actually take this forward into a proper election campaign. Sorry.
Comment actually. Thank you very much for sharing.
Absolutely.
I really feel that we have to get rid of this rubbish of the candidates not having the questions before the meeting. I think that we would get a much better response to the questions. And I just think it's an absolute waste of time, because it's quite clear that people, off the cuff struggle. I also want to bring to the attention that it's discriminatory. It was clearly discriminatory for one of the candidates that was for the mayor, the London Assembly. In light of what the lady was saying about transcribing, we had a candidate that was visually impaired and deaf and had to use sign language. It was clearly discriminatory for that person to only have the question questions maybe an hour beforehand. I think it's also potentially discriminatory for people with BME, and so we have to stop this. If this party really believes that it's inclusive, we have to organise properly. And as I said, the way you've chaired it, people coming in and doing the actual hustings is always very good, but we have to have it done properly.
Thank you. I think those are really, really good points. And this kind of format where you have 11 candidates is a very unusual kind of hustings, because usually you'll have 4 or 5 and you're actually taking the questions from the audience. And I absolutely take your point that if we're doing hustings like this, we should write it down in our kind of notes for next time we're doing these selections, because it applies to the London Assembly as well, that actually having the questions circulated in advance would be, might well lead to a fairer situation. So I think that's a very, very well made point. Thank you.
And also people can do their homework. Earlier on today, people were talking about Poland. Clearly they knew very little about Poland, because Poland actually, before it came into the European Union, was one of the most green countries in Europe in terms of
I'm sorry, because it's 5 o'clock. We're meant to have finished by now. So I absolutely thank you for your practical point about how we organise hustings in the future. And I hope maybe Phil, if you can get that into our ERO report, that would be really helpful. So everyone, thank you very much indeed. We do need some help with packing up because we are meant to be out. So and I don't know if anyone has an idea about it.